It reminded me, it talks about here in one place about how that we will choose fear over love. And the reason we will is because we made fear.
Right.
And we didn't make love.
Right.
Love is what we were created of and in.
Right.
That's our being. And so we hold in this ego thought idea to what we believe we made as being our reality. And we'll fight to the very end to hold on to that.
To hold on to the world we made.
World.
That's why you see, like World War II, that's probably the most reminiscent. But when a dictator has made his world of his country and his regime and his, what do they call it, like the empire, no matter how hard it is or how much comes against them and they're in total defeat, they cannot admit defeat. And so they'll just say, burn the whole thing down. We're going down with the ship, because they can't let go. And it's the same principle. It's just a reflection of that we will not let go of what we made.
Well, I believe there was a time in this country, this illusionary country, where we had a system whereby we agreed on mutual destruction of the whole thing.
Right.
Because one couldn't gain power over another.
Right.
How insane is that?
Right. It's
if I can't have it, you can't either.
They call that MAD, mutual assured destruction, and we're talking about a mad idea, tiny mad idea. Now we talk about the gate of heaven. We talked about Jesus being at the end of time. We talked about time rolling up like a carpet. And we talk about being, the real world leads you to the gate of heaven, and the question is, why would heaven need a gate? Right? Who are we trying to hold inside? Who wants to get out? Or who are we trying to keep from getting in?
Who made this gate?
Right. Who made the gate? We made the gate. But it's just a symbol of a thought that there's a final door that we need to go through.
Right. There's a last step here where it's ultimately over.
Right.
And that means that every alien thought that I allowed to invade my pure mind is no longer there.
And Jesus stands there as an elder brother. Again, Jesus is a symbol. We're no different than Jesus. Jesus woke up. He appears to be the first man, quote, man that woke up. And I like to say it like this, that Jesus didn't need an alarm clock. He woke up. But he started being the alarm clock for us. Now we can lay in that bed and let that, hit the snooze button. I don't want to wake up yet. I don't want to wake up yet. We've actually chosen, we've already stood at the end of time and chosen when we will wake up.
Absolutely.
But that alarm clock's going to keep going off. It's never going to stop. And ultimately, everyone will wake up.
Reminds me of a story in the Bible about Moses and the children of Israel and the plague of the frogs. And Moses goes to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, well, I'll let you go tomorrow. Okay, that means you're going to spend one more night with the frogs.
Right.
Why
do you want to spend
one more night with the frogs?
Right. Holding on to the kingdom.
See, if you're watching this, it's not by accident. You're being drawn in. There's a voice that's calling, that's saying, why spend one more night with the frogs?
Right.
You can make a choice.
Right. Why not get up now? Why hit the snooze button and hang around for another 15 minutes of sleep?
Right.
Right. In a nightmare.
Which could be 15 cycles.
Right. It could be. So nothing happened. We never left heaven. And that is the major principle. That is the atonement principle. How do we deal with our neighbor? Joe is our neighbor next door. How do we see him? Why is Joe our neighbor even in our dream? Because he is now colliding with it. We talked about. Go ahead and talk about worlds colliding.
Worlds don't join. This little private world thing doesn't join. It's impossible because you've made it to be private. That's why those figures are shadow figures in this world that you control. You don't think you control them, but you do control them. It's a world of either being the victim or victimizer, and you're doing those things at the same time. Well, Joe's there as a personality until you see beyond that personality and recognize that Joe don't exist. and you begin to, the ministry of the mind, or the ministry of the spirit, is going beyond the personality and all of the personality quirks that we judge as being quirks, and embracing the reality of the Son. Because you can only have an encounter with yourself, and every encounter is either a holy encounter or an unholy encounter. It's either Joe or the Son.
Right.
And this is a call where you learn how to only see the Son and only respond to the Son.
Right. We take, as we look at Joe, we're going to see him however we see ourselves. So if we see Joe with all his problems and all his mess and his quirkiness, we need to say, okay, I'm going to bring Joe to the altar to the Son. Not to the altar to sin, but the altar to the Son. And at that altar, we're going to lay all of Joe's stuff up on that altar. And when we're going to allow the Holy Spirit to remove that and replace all that with what the Course talks about, lilies of love, lilies of
Right.
pureness. And we begin to see Joe no longer as quirky Joe, our neighbor, but as the Son of God.
Right.
And to that extent, we see ourselves the same way, because when we brought his stuff, what appeared to be his stuff, to the altar,
Right.
that was our stuff.
Right.
We wouldn't have noticed his stuff if it hadn't been inside of us to notice.
We made him a part of our world.
Right.
If you look at the two emotions, it says that you see with these two emotions. If you see with fear, you see Joe. But if you see with love, you see the Son.
Right.
So those are means of seeing. The real world is about only seeing with love, because fear has no place in the real world.
Right.
Because there's nothing to protect, and there's nothing to judge, and there's nothing to protect a separate self. The little separate self has been released gladly into the light of the reality of the divine mind. As you recognize that you are an expression, you are a thought in the mind of God.
Right. And a lot of people get frustrated and they say, I have so many people to forgive. We got 7 quote billion people out here to forgive. And the reality is, if we learn to just forgive Joe, we realize that all our neighbors are the same. If we forgave Joe, we forgave them all. They're all the same.
If you forgive Joe, you let them all go.
And you forgive yourself.
Right, because you're going from fear, sight, to, which is not seeing at all, to love, which is true vision, and seeing the Christ, which is the one.
Right. Well, the question was asked here, what is the real world? And I think the voice answered, what is the real world for us? So.
And the beautiful thing about it is we're just getting started, because the great thing about teaching, you teach to learn.
Right.
As we share the real world, the voice that we hear from the real world, guess what? We hear the voice from the real world.
Right. Okay. So that'll do it for now. Join us next time.
For more information about Voice from the Real World, please feel free to visit our website at www.voicefromtherealworld.org or send us an email at voicefromtherealworld@yahoo.com. Thank you for watching.